Welcome to another edition of our treatment of the International Sunday School lesson. Today's lesson is entitled Faithful During Distress. And it's for the fall quarter, lesson number 1, 2019. That's September the 1st, 2019. And it's taken from Genesis 19:1, Genesis 19:4 through 5, Genesis 19:15 through 26, and then jumping down to Genesis 19:29. Okay, a little background information. Today's lesson is on the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah and the deliverance of Lot and his 2 children from that destruction. Now, background information about Lot. Lot was the nephew of Abraham, and it's very obvious when you read the book of Genesis how much Abraham deeply cared for his nephew Lot. You know, and a lot of times your nieces and nephews can be just like your own children. And that seems to be the kind of relationship that Abraham and Lot had. If you remember back in the story, how that there had been some contention had developed between Abraham and Lot's herdsmen. And so they were going to split up and go in different directions. And Abraham, because he loved Lot so much, told Lot to, you pick out whichever direction you want to go in to settle in, and I'll let you have that. And he pretty much gave his nephew Lot the pick of the pick of wherever he wanted to go, and he ended up picking the area of Sodom and Gomorrah, which before its destruction was a very plentiful, a very easy, rich area to be in. And that's the area that Lot picked, was the area of Sodom and Gomorrah. And we also know from how much Abraham cared about Lot when Lot was taken prisoner. And so Abraham got all of his men together and went down there and worked to free and fought to free Lot from his captivity, and actually succeeded in it. And the kings of the area were going to go ahead and give Abraham a spoil because of his fighting and helping them out. And he said, no, just let the men who are with me get what they've spent on it, and we'll call it even. I got what I wanted because I got my nephew Lot out of this jam. So that's how much Abraham cared about Lot. And we also know from reading the book of Genesis how that the 3 visitors had came to Abraham, and God told Abraham that the sin of Sodom and Gomorrah had came before him, and he was going to judge Sodom and Gomorrah. And Abraham, naturally, his thoughts went to his beloved nephew Lot. And so Abraham started negotiating out with God. Well, God, what happens if you find 50 righteous people in Sodom and Gomorrah? And God said, well, I won't destroy it for 50 people. And so Abraham thinks, well, I'm on a roll here. God, what happens if you only find 40? And God says, well, I'll spare it for 40. And so Abraham keeps going till he gets it down to 10. God, what if you only find 10 righteous people in Sodom and Gomorrah? Will you destroy it anyway? Or will you save it for those 10 people? And God says, no, I'll spare it for those 10 people. Well, the two angels were sent to Sodom and Gomorrah to check everything out. And that's pretty much, well, where we pick up our Bible reading today. Now, starting in Genesis 19:1, the two angels arrived at Sodom in the evening, and Lot was sitting in the gateway of the city when he saw them. And he got up to meet them and bowed down with his face to the ground. So we see here with the two angels, who were two of the three people who had been with Abraham, these two angels come into Sodom. And Lot, as the custom of people who were rich and influential in the city, he was in the gateway of the city there, and he saw them. And somehow or another he recognized that these are people, two men that he needs to be kind to and respectful of. And he saw them and respectfully bowed down with his face to the ground out of respect, not out of worship, but out of respect to these two angels. Now, in the verses we just skipped, he had got the angels to come into his house. Okay, now Genesis 19:4-5, before they had gone to bed, all the men from every part of the city of Sodom, both young and old, surrounded the house. They called to Lot, "Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us so that we can have sex with them." So we see how that things have just gotten horrible. And this is undoubtedly one of the reasons why Lot was really pressing these angels to come and stay with him, because he knew the caliber of the people in this city. The book of Peter talks about how that the people of Sodom, the unrighteousness that was in Sodom had vexed Lot's righteous soul. It made him miserable with all the unrighteousness. And Lot knew this and knew the condition of the city, and he got the men to come into his house out of concern for them. Now we skipped a little bit more, and in the text it talks about how that the angels had blinded the people where they couldn't find the door and everything, and they miraculously solved the situation because all of the inhabitants of the city were going to beat down the door. But anyhow, 19:15 and 6-16, when the coming of dawn, the angels urged Lot, saying, "Hurry, take your wife and your two daughters who are here, or you will be swept away when the city is punished." When he hesitated, the men grasped his hand and the hands of his wife and his two daughters and led them safely out of the city, for the Lord was merciful to them. And we see how that Lot, even though his righteous soul was being vexed by the sin that was in Sodom and Gomorrah, that how that maybe because he had made so much money and it was so lucrative to be there in Sodom and Gomorrah, how that he had hesitated and did not seem to want to go and flee the city, even though these angels, these people who had already demonstrated that they had supernatural power when they struck all those people with blindness, how that Lot was hesitating, even though the angels had told him they were going to destroy the city utterly. And he was hesitating where he didn't really want to go there and leave the city immediately. Genesis 19 and 17. As soon as they had brought them out, one of them said, "Flee for your lives. Don't look back and don't stop anywhere in the plain. Flee to the mountains or you will be swept away. So these angels tell them that they need to, in all haste, to leave that ungodly city. Don't be entangled in it. Don't look back. Just head on out of here, because the evilness, the day of judgment has come, and you need to leave. Don't look back. Don't stop. Keep on going until you get to safety in the mountains. Okay, Genesis 19:18 through 21. And Lot said to them, No, my lords, please, let your servant has found favor in your eyes, and you have shown great kindness to me in sparing my life, but I can't flee to the mountains. This disaster will overtake me, and I'll die. Look, here is a town near enough to run to, and it's small. Let me flee to it. It is small, isn't it? Then my life will be spared. He said to him, Very well, I will grant this request to you. I will not overthrow the town you speak of. So we see here how that Lot had thrown out an alternate plan. The angels had told him to go all the way out to the mountains to get completely out from these cities of the plain where this ungodliness had been festering and growing for all these years. And God had been merciful and had let this thing go on to give them time to repent. And Lot did not want to go all the way out to the mountains of the wilderness. But he had him a little city just picked out there that maybe it was just as prosperous as the city that he was running from. And he was saying, well, now let me just go out to this city here. He didn't want to leave all the way. And let me make a point here that things did not work out that well for Lot's descendants. Lot's descendants ended up being the Moabites and the Ammonites. And they had not been a righteous group of people. They got caught up in all kinds of ungodliness, and they had suffered a lot of consequences. And I conjecture and wonder if Lot, if he had went all the way out to the mountain with that first plan and completely got all the way away from the cities of the plain, the Sodom and Gomorrah, and gotten completely away from those cities, and just turned his back on that wealth and what have you, and went all the way out to the mountains, that maybe his descendants would have turned out a little bit better. You never can tell. But he did hit the angels with this alternate plan, and the angels did agree to let him go to Zoar. Okay, Genesis 19:22 through 23. But flee there quickly, because I cannot do anything till you reach it. That is why the town was called Zoar. By the time Lot reached Zoar, the sun had risen over the land. So we see here how that the angels had whisked them out in the very, very, very pre-dawn hours. And they had been heading away under the forcing of these angels out of Sodom. And when they finally reached their destination, it was just about time for sunrise, and the sunrise was actually happening when they finally reached Zoar. Okay, Genesis 19:24 through 26. Then the Lord rained down burning sulfur on Sodom and Gomorrah from the Lord out of the heavens. Thus he overthrew those cities and the entire plain, destroying all those living in the cities and also the vegetation in the land. But Lot's wife looked back. She became a pillar of salt. So a couple of things that I want to really underscore in these verses. First off, that these people had gotten away with living all kinds of ungodliness, or raping people, homosexuality, living ungodly. They had gotten away with this for all these years, but finally the judgment happened. And when it did, it was utter and total. But we see here where Lot's wife, because she was interested in what was going on, she had attachments to the old place and attachments to the old way. And she turned back. And when she did, she was turned into a pillar of salt. Now let me tell you something. When we get saved, we don't need to be looking back and reminiscing over the old life and reliving the old life over and over again. The only thing, giving you testimony and telling everybody how bad things were and how you're thankful to be saved, that's one thing. But I have seen some people where they would sit there and romanticize about all of the ungodliness that they got into and the stuff that they thought was fun back before they were a Christian. And I'll tell you something. Thinking back to, throwing a good drunk and everything, you may remember only the good parts of it. You don't want to remember sitting there all the next morning with that busting headache, hugging the toilet, throwing up. You won't want to remember that, but you'll end up thinking about maybe laughing uncontrollably or something and fantasizing about how that it was such a good time, but you're not thinking about all of the consequences that went along with that. And the Bible, in multiple places, Jesus said, remember Lot's wife. And he said in multiple places, no man with his hands on the plow looking back is fit for the kingdom of heaven. We need to be looking forward to the calling of the high mark, to the goal of living right and telling people about Jesus. We need to be looking forward to the goal of doing right and not looking back at what little temporal fun we might have had with some of the stupid things that we were into. Okay? Remember Lot's wife. Don't be turned into some pillar of salt. Okay, jumping down to Genesis 19 and 29. So when God destroyed the cities of the plain, he remembered Abraham. And he brought Lot out of the catastrophe that overthrew the cities where Lot had lived. Now let me tell you something. All of us have got people in our families that are not living right. All of us have got people in our families who are in bad situations. And let me tell you something. We all need to band together and pray for the people of our families. Because if you read the story of Lot and Sodom and Gomorrah, there's a lot of lessons you can learn from it. One of the lessons that really just blesses me more than anything is the fact that Abraham cared about his nephew. how that Abraham loved that nephew. And Abraham pleaded with God and asked God to spare him. And God did. God spared Lot and was merciful to Lot because Abraham had asked him to. And we need to approach our family with that same kind of attitude, where we are asking God to be merciful to our families. Okay, some concluding thoughts on today's lesson. First off, it's just real obvious from what I've said, but I want to be real clear about something. Homosexuality is a sin. The Bible is extremely clear about that. Extremely clear about that. And it was one of the reasons why Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed, is because of the perversion that was going on in those cities. There were also other things going on in that city. If you'll notice how that these men of the city had gathered around Lot's house and were about ready to force their will on these two visitors. They were going to prey on these two visitors. They thought that they were much more powerful than those two visitors. And that is another thing that is the evil that was in Sodom and Gomorrah. And anytime somebody tries to force their physical will onto another person, whether or not it's somebody of the same sex or the opposite sex, or what have you, that is always evil to do that. And that is part of the evil that was in Sodom and Gomorrah. So we need to be real mindful to teach our young people that is not an acceptable form of behavior. It is not okay to do that kind of thing. It's not okay to force your will on to another person. So we want to emphasize that. The other thing that I want to emphasize is some of the blessings that you can see inside of this story of Sodom and Gomorrah. We see how that the righteous Abraham, how he had pleaded with God and negotiated with God because he knew that his beloved nephew Lot was in this place, and God had heard Abraham, and Lot was spared because of Abraham's prayers. And we need to take the people in our family and we need to plead with God for them to be spared, especially in these perilous times that we live in. There is so much ungodliness in this world today. And we need to pray fervently for the members of our family. And God will hear on high. And we need to be looking for that time of deliverance where the great trump of God will sound and the dead in Christ will rise, and those of us who are remain will go up to meet Him in the air. That day is coming where the destruction is coming and deliverance is coming to the people of God. And we need to try to get as many people and try to drag as many of our families with us to meet Jesus in the air. Well, friends, good Lord willing, I'll be back with you next weekend.